Association of Secondary School Principals for having us on today. Doug and Clark set us up very nicely. You mentioned my colleagues on the line as well, Deb and Tim. They're monitoring chat. So if you have questions during the presentation, please direct your comments there. And my email address is very easy. I'll ask Deb and Tim, or I should say Deb or Tim, in the chat. You could just leave my email address there. And if you'd like to communicate with me afterwards, you can certainly do so, or even today. So I thought the best way to begin and share resources with you is just go right to our website. And I'm hoping you're viewing my screen now. It's the ACT homepage. Can I get a confirmation that you can see that?
Chris, we can see your screen.
Great, thank you so much. And as I said, this is our homepage. And at the very top, front and center, you see the COVID-19 updates. We wanted to make sure that we provided resources for really all stakeholders in regards to some things that are available to you for our new world of remote learning. So if you were to click on that link there, it would take you to this page here. And as you scroll down, you'll see specific audience buttons for your solution or your sphere of influence. And then further down, you'll see resources based on your role at your institution. So I encourage you to check those out as you need be. If further down, you'll see a current ACT customers with some drop-down menus. You can find associated resources information based on the product that you are currently using and how it may have changed or been enhanced or given you expanded access to resources based on this current situation. At the very top of the screen here, you'll see the bell with that red number 1. That's our way of sharing information and announcements with you guys. So if you click on that, you'll get some information in regards to notifications and this FAQ page here. And I'm just gonna go ahead and click on, sorry. So a page that's dedicated to frequently asked questions regards to mostly national testing. If you've got questions about weekday testing, that would be that prior page that you can go click on the button specifically for district testing. So with that said, I was fortunate enough to have Doug and Clark collect some information, questions from you guys in advance. So I think what I'd like to do is I'll go through each of those questions. I will pause and ask my colleagues to chime in with any questions they're seeing in the chat feed and perhaps anything from that question that might need some further clarification. So with the first question, what will most college universities do regarding students that were supposed to take the ACT on April 4th and not satisfied with that ACT score that they currently have? I attended last week a brown bag lunch with some St. Louis area counselors, and I was fortunate enough to be in the audience with several admissions and financial aid folks from institutions across Missouri. And they concurred what we were hearing, and that is decisions, such as these are a local institutional decision. All specific institutional questions should be really directed to them. It may differ from institution to institution or program to program. Anecdotally, we've heard that many institutions are also adapting their admissions and scholarship processes as a result of this outbreak. So that's the first question. Again, I'll pause briefly. And the next question, will there be additional ACT test dates added? So we have added a June 2nd as well as an October 6th, 6th being for the 2021 school year. administration of the ACT weekday testing, and June 13th for national testing. And since I wrote this question out, there's been some information that was provided to us. If you were planning on testing your juniors this last spring and it was canceled, and you'd like to test them as seniors next year, you will be able to test your juniors and seniors this fall, and it would be the same price as if you would have paid this last spring or this current spring. So there's no price increase for the next school year, and that's only for the fall. A couple other things to consider. This landscape, as we all know, is constantly changing. We are having ongoing conversations to prepare for other scenarios, as well as, well, will that change? Will we add more test dates? How will the landscape look? Will it be different? How different? Lots of unknowns out there, so we have to be careful about making sure we study every possibility scenario and make sure that we give you a solution that's going to fit your and your students' needs.
And Chris, I just got a question in the chat just for clarification from Brenda. She was asking June 2nd and October 6th.
Yes, October 6th was the most recently added weekday administration. And thanks for chiming in. We're at what, April 15th, and we keep hearing about, and it goes to my second part of the question or response with the change in the landscape. So June 2nd sounded good a month ago, and it's becoming, as we get closer and closer to May, we have to think about logistics, staffing, the facility, delivery and receipt of materials. So June 2nd, again, sounded great a month ago, but October 6th might be something to seriously consider. And one other bullet point that I added for this, and this will reiteration actually, I'm not sure a lot of folks are aware that when you do weekday testing, there is no parameter on the year of school for that individual taking the test. So we have a lot of schools that test juniors and seniors, maybe some rising sophomores as well, but it's recommended the junior class for sure, and maybe senior retakes for seniors who in the fall would miss the opportunity that previous spring.
And Chris, just a couple other questions for those test dates. Is June 2nd when the window opens? Would that be a 2-week window for district testing online?
Whoever asked that question, if you wouldn't mind reaching out to me specifically, because we're talking about, and I need to clarify, June 2nd is my understanding of the test date. Whether it's online or paper pencil, we have to make sure that we're talking about the apples and apples. So I need to connect with that individual, if I could, please.
Okay. And then another question, and Christina said that she knows that she has reached out to Chris and he is working on it, but would love to be able to buy vouchers for this year's juniors for Saturday testing next year, so we could use this year's budgeted money instead of paying double next year.
Well, that actually is one of the questions I have here, and I'm just going to skip right to that. So, can we supply vouchers for our students to take a national test on their own? And unfortunately for the person I communicated with, I have no new news on the 2021 vouchers. I do know that the 1920, pardon me, vouchers are still available online, and they can be for the June and July national test. Again, keep in mind the ever-changing landscape. And while I'm talking about vouchers, I'm going to go to my screen here and show you. If you click on our little search magnifying glass right here and you type in vouchers, you can get to a page where you can type in vouchers, and this is where it gets a little embarrassing, I'm sorry. Pre-billed registration voucher information for order form 2016-17. Please ignore the 2016-17. When you click on that, you'll get the voucher form for 19-20. So we'll have to work on getting that changed. Kind of what I said earlier in regards to ongoing conversations. We are in the field, folks like myself and Tim and Deb that have the ear of folks like you. We are hearing this question quite often, and we are really being cognizant of that and having those conversations on a regular basis to make sure that we can push out that voucher application perhaps a little early. A couple of things we have to consider going forward. September 2020. If you recall, that announcement came out last year that gave us or gave students the ability to do subject area testing. And that kind of throws a new category, if you will, into this voucher form. So we have to be, again, cognizant of that, the options for students, the access and opportunity, and make sure that voucher form covers all of those bases. Now, having mentioned September 2020, we may have to think about how that's going to look. We're, like I said, we're April 15th. That's 5 months from now. So we really have to be thoughtful about process and options for really all stakeholders.
And Chris, I do have several more questions that came in fast and furious from the chat. So Becky's asking, can a private school administer the June 2nd or April 6th test? And they are not a national test center.
Can you repeat the first part of that question, please?
So she was asking about private school. Can a private school administer the June 2nd or October 6th test? And they are not a national test center.
For weekday testing, any school, any high school building can administer weekday testing. So what I would suggest, an individual, again, reach out to me. I can connect you with the portion of our website that allows you to get that process rolling at your school.
All right, and the next question, will section retest be an option if we do school testing in the fall?
Not this fall. The original plan, when we launched September 2020, called for September 2021, having schools that were doing weekday testing have that option. So we have to wait a year for weekday testing. A year from September.
So if they're looking at doing it within their school district, then, and it's that weekday testing, but if a student had already taken it in a prior administration, then they could take it during one of those national tests.
During the national test, yes.
Okay.
Not during weekday.
All right, and another one here, Jessica, will accommodations be available to be entered for the June 2nd exam? For example, if we have a student that could not test March 24th due to COVID school closure, will we be able to still enter the necessary accommodations through TAA for that student if their accommodations were not approved the first time?
Well, that sounds like a two-part question. The first part, I thought you were going to go with, I have accommodations approved for a student whose test was canceled or moved to June or October. Can we use those same accommodations approvals for those assessments, for those dates, I'm sorry. So the comment I had heard the other day was that we were working on migrating or having a conversation about migrating approvals to the next opportunity for weekday testing. If a student had not been granted accommodations and they wish to for an upcoming assessment, you'll have to go through that accommodations process to gain approval. I hope I understood that question and answered that. in a way.
Yeah, I think so. So if they didn't
Okay.
receive it for a previous, they could not test in March, looking at testing in June. Yeah, I would just resubmit. And in that case, I don't know if you're able to contact test accommodations and perhaps inquire why it wasn't approved, if it was maybe a time length that the student was showing the accommodation necessary. I know students that weren't diagnosed with dyslexia until their junior year. And so when it suddenly popped up in their IEP, it raised a red flag at ACT. So it may be something along those lines. I don't know the particular situation, but I would always try and get more details of why it was denied from ACT.
Can I move on to a few more questions?
Yes.
Okay.
Will 2020 seniors that take the June or July test still be eligible to qualify for Bright Flight?
That is outside of my expertise. I would reach out to DESI or Pirate to see what their parameters or new requirements or processes are currently.
Okay. Can we use testing vouchers 1920 for juniors to take a Saturday test date in June or July?
So if I understood that correctly, the voucher form that's on the screen right now is good for June or July and can be for any student the school designates.
Okay. What happens if we purchase vouchers for 1920 and the June, July national test dates are canceled? Can students use these vouchers for 2021?
I don't know this answer the second part of that question. I do know that the 1920 vouchers, there's a hard stop on that July test date. And it's a nice segue into one of the questions I received ahead of time, and it may be related. So let me read this. This wasn't necessarily concerning vouchers, but why do students have to pay and be refunded for the test date change due to the April test cancellation and for the registration to transfer without having to enter a card for payment? So I know this necessarily isn't a voucher question, but I'm going to safely assume that this is related in terms of process. So every student that registered for any canceled national test, they were notified by email. They were provided information, instructions for free rescheduling to June 13th or a future ACT national test date. Students who can't or don't wish to reschedule may receive a refund of their fee. It's my understanding that if nothing is done, so if the student registered and just didn't do anything, they'll be refunded. A good rule of thumb is to make that call. So what I propose for this particular question for vouchers, and again, it's a safe assumption, if we cancel June and July, we're not going to hold or not return the funds for that voucher purchase. I do know that we're going to need a new form for the 2021 school year. So in a nutshell, you won't lose the funds, but we may have to do another voucher form if we have to carry over to the next school year.
Okay, thank you. We've got several more chats, but I'll let you get back to the questions that were previously asked.
Sure, I've got 4 more, and then we can, we're at almost 10:30, so I think we'll be okay. The next question supplied was, how can my school switch from paper testing to online testing for additional flexibility within the initial and makeup scheduled test windows? There is a form that you can submit online for the change of mode, basically. If you plan to administer standard time and or ACT authorized accommodations via paper only during your initial makeup test window, you'd like to explore whether it's possible to set up your sites to test online, refer to the configuration section of your ACT district testing webpage. So the individual at your school that handles all of the communication, the setup, the receipt, return of materials, that kind of thing. There is a technical requirements for the ACT test taken online section of that page. And after looking over that information and resources, if you have questions about moving to online, you could certainly email us, and I'll say this slowly, it's pretty easy, ACT district testing, all one word, @act.org. If you feel more comfortable sending me a note and having me walk you through it, I'm happy to do that as well. Okay, next question just came the other day. Can you estimate the number of registrants for the June and July test dates? I am concerned about getting adequate staff to work those dates. So this is obviously from a school building that's a national test center site. So the answer here is your school building, the colleague at your building that handles national testing, receives regular communications from us. And this is regarding the process, materials, those kinds of things. However, we do not update the site as registrations occur. Instead, we recommend that that individual log on to, we have a system called an SRPS. And I'm assuming the individual that handles all of that at your school would know what the Suppler registration and payment system is. That's where they have the ability to log on. So they have the power to log on and see how many kids have registered for that particular date. So that allows sites to keep track of the number of students who have registered for their site, and then they can plan their facility space and staff their center appropriately. Okay, a couple more. Since rolling out their single subject test option starting in September, I have been confused by two things. First one is schools telling us that they will not accept the single subject score for admissions or scholarships. And they specifically cited University of Nebraska. And two, the ACT score report that students have, the option to send, does that include the single subject test score as part of the super score? And the second part of that question is, so does a student have to send different score reports depending on what the college university would accept? First, some research. Research has shown that many universities already do some sort of score analysis with students who've taken that test multiple times. Super scoring, pardon me, is one of those strategies. A couple of things to consider here. First, every score sent to an institution includes a full battery. Second, if that score was created as a result of a super score, it is identified as such. It's important that students know the expectations of those institutions as they relate and understand that institution's admissions policies and practices. It kind of goes back to that, one of our first questions. Got a question for that institution, I got to reach out to them because it may vary by college or program. Okay, the last one here is, while navigating the ACT website, looking for resources, product information, and other relevant information, I noticed there's quite a bit out there. Is there one place to go that I can see everything in one place and then choose which assessment I need to explore? We just launched this last fall, and this is, I'm leading up to something here, online reporting. And online reporting gives you at the school level the ability to view data, testing students, historical data, that kind of thing. It also will be their future repository for all data going forward. So this fall, will be the last fall you received data disks. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because success, that page is going to be really the one-stop shop for all things ACT. You'll have to create an account and sign in with that, but on the right-hand side, you'll see really a nice quick link to whichever product you might need for more information on. So what I would recommend, and getting back to the online reporting piece, last fall we sent notice to every school leader, head of school, superintendent in regards to this new process for our online reporting here. And they are given credentials to sign in and then delegate access. So I would bet that this is going to be the mode, the method, the way that we communicate sensitive information and be able to report data to you folks on a regular basis. If you're not familiar with this, I would recommend that you reach out to your school leader and request access. And again, for most of the things we talked about this morning, I'm happy to walk you through that process. And I believe that's all of the pre-provided questions. Defer to my colleague.
All right. So Natalie had asked about fee waivers, and that's a very good question. A lot of those fee waivers are back at campus and you can't get access to them. If you look in the chat box at 10:30, I did go ahead and post how you can get PDF to you, fee waivers, those vouchers. So go ahead and check that out. If you want to get those sent out, you can contact ACT via phone or via email, and both those contact numbers are listed at the 10:30 mark in your chat box. So the next question for you then, Chris, is my school is a national testing center, but we are scheduled to participate in the April ACT study. Our juniors received fee waivers for this test. Can they transfer those to June? As I have been told, we will be offering the June test for the study. Or should they be doing or what should they be doing to transfer their test administration?
Well, that's a very good question. I would need to connect with you and perhaps talk with someone in Iowa City about how they'd like to proceed with that. Case studies are quite specific in terms of parameters and requirements. So I'd like to walk you through it if I could.
All right, so Lacey, at the beginning of the chat, Chris's contact information, his email address is listed in there. Thank you. So we're looking for clarifications. If accommodation was approved for March district testing, it will apply to October district testing without resubmitting, correct?
That's what I need to clarify. I cannot say that for certainty. It was my understanding that was one of the processes they were talking about. As we all know, this is uncharted territory, so we have to make sure that we dot our I's and cross our T's. Test validity and making sure that these are college admissible scores are of the utmost importance.
Okay, and I did get a note here from Judith saying that Bright Flight can use June or July. So just for clarification on that question. All right, so our school registered to participate in an ACT study for April. I have been told that the study has been moved to June. That was our previous question there, and have been receiving conflicting information on how students should be transferring their registration. Is the test being moved to June, as I was told? Will students need to receive new waivers, or can they transfer their previous waivers to June date? Probably most importantly, who should they contact if they are available to transfer that waiver? When will the waivers be received? And I think that's the series of questions, Chris, that you just mentioned. And if you want to speak to any of those testing and studies entities at ACT.
Yeah, what I mentioned earlier, being at a really kind of a special process in regards to doing these studies, we need to make sure we're all on the same page. So I'll repeat what I said. Let's you and I connect that institution, and we'll get to the person we need to speak with at in Iowa City in regards to how to make sure that this is going to be a valid and valuable process.
All right. So next question from a man, or I'm sorry, it's a statement. Yes. DHEWD approved this through July. So I'm assuming she's referring to the Bright Flight.
Okay.
Can we test seniors on October 6th and juniors next spring?
Absolutely.
Yep.
One of the schools I spoke with yesterday actually was historically had tested their seniors for retakes in the fall and their juniors in the spring. And since this all came down, he decided to test everybody this fall, those current year seniors and some juniors, and also then test again in the spring to get back in that regular cycle of spring testing.
All
You can
right.
test any grade level. I shouldn't say that. Your juniors and seniors can test whenever you'd like. It's some schools decide to test some rising sophomores, but pre-ACT might, or ACT Aspire, some of it might be a more appropriate grade level assessment for those 10th and 9th graders.
All right. If vouchers are purchased, I assume payment is upfront and not based on if they're used. Is that accurate?
That is accurate. You request a number of vouchers from ACT, you submit payment for that, and we supply you that number of vouchers.
All right. And do those vouchers need to be used within that calendar year?
Yes, they are for a school year. So this voucher form that you're looking at on the screen came out last fall, and it could be used for any test date during that school year or that ACT testing date year. So that final test would be July.
All right. Next question, what are the stipulations for a district to designate a student?
I'm not sure I follow that. Designate?
Yeah, it's in parentheses. So I don't know if it's.
Maybe if that individual can.
Carmen, if you don't mind, just chatting some clarification there. Oh yeah, please.
I was actually wondering about designating for the vouchers. When I asked my previous question about the vouchers for the juniors or seniors that were supposed to test.
So you're asking if you have to designate what year in school they are?
No, as far as you said that we would need to designate, our school district would have to designate who could get those vouchers. Is that just based on like the normal designation previously, like free and reduced lunch status, homelessness status, etc.?
Okay, I think I understand you. I'm sorry for misunderstanding you initially. So vouchers are purchased basically in bulk, and then you can designate, or use that word, whoever would like to receive those and use those for a national test date. Now, of course, we can't control who you give them to, so it can be a sophomore, but we recommend that, again, most juniors and seniors use those vouchers. And keep in mind, you mentioned fee waivers, that fee waivers can't be used for weekday testing. And this September, the plan was to roll out we're going to double the amount of fee waivers that students have access to during their high school career. So keep that in mind going forward, that those students who qualify will have that many more opportunities to take the ACT at no cost to them.
Okay. So the next question, so to clarify, students originally scheduled for the April test have to register again for the June test. I think my students thought the test had just been changed, not that they had to re-register. And do they need a new fee waiver for this?
So they will have to re-register, and they can re-register for June or July. That fee waiver question will have to be a question for the individual they speak with about the re-registration, for lack of a better word. But as I said earlier, if they do nothing if a student paid for, so minus the voucher scenario, if they do nothing, then they will be refunded. If they need to reschedule, they'll have to call and pick which date they'd like to reschedule for, but there will be no additional charge for that. We'll be able to move that registration fee to the next, the chosen test date.
Okay. So next from Ginger, just want to clarify if I heard this correctly. The following, did you say that students who are scheduled to take the April test date and don't do a test change will be refunded original payment? I believe you just mentioned that.
Yes.
In addition, if our students register for the June or July Saturday test and those tests are canceled, will they also be refunded even if they don't do a test date change?
With the precedent of this first canceled test date, I would safely assume that the process would be identical for future canceled test dates. Where it might get a little muddy is if we start looking at the next calendar year, first school year. So we have to make sure that we are placing those students in a test scenario that's an easy switch. I would venture to guess that we'd be able to move them to that next school year testing without any issue or concern.
Okay, and then next on the list here were just the instructions for getting those vouchers. Again, up to 25. It's at the 10:30 a.m. mark if you're looking at the chat right now. All right, so next question. Our juniors are needing to take the ACT prior to August for dual credit class requirements. I would like to purchase vouchers for those juniors needing an ACT score. If I purchase the vouchers and then test is canceled for June or July, will my school be reimbursed? Earlier, you said no, that the vouchers will carry over to the 2021 school year. There's no need to take the test for our juniors during the 2021 year for dual enrollment purposes.
Clarify something. I have to double check and make sure that vouchers from 2021, I'm sorry, 1920 will carry for 2021. If June and July are canceled, I'm sure we will not hold you to what you've been charged for a test that didn't take place. So what we need to do is make sure that we are giving you accurate information. And why don't we connect offline to make sure that we talk about how that would apply to dual credit and this particular scenario. It's pretty unique.
And Chris, just so you know, Tim is behind the scenes trying to get answers to some of these questions that are unknowns at this time. And so if that's okay with folks in the line, or we can provide this certainly to Clark and Doug and provide all this information that we do still have questions about, provide that to them, and they can disseminate that to all those in attendance today, if that works.
I will also send over to Clark and Doug the pre-provided questions along with some the answers and links that I've inserted into those questions.
Perfect. Thank you. All right, next question. Will we need to re-upload students for the fall test if we did date change from this spring, or will they be in the portal for fall testing?
It's my understanding that you will have to do another student data upload because we're going to have ultimately some scenarios with some students who are no longer either at that school, perhaps they've graduated, but we'll have to do another student data upload. And it should be fairly painless because you'll have the file and you'll be able to add and delete students as you see appropriate.
All right. Can we use the junior study vouchers for test date in October, and how can we give that to them? I know this is a question that none of the ACT staff that are on the call know, because we don't work with research and folks that are doing those studies, but I know our colleague Tim Osborne has contacted folks and is checking to see if we can get an answer to that particular study. And actually, I think he had asked, there were, when he had asked about the study, I think he had chimed in. There are several studies that I believe are going on at this time. And so if folks wouldn't mind just putting in that chat box which specific study they're referring to, that would be great. And that way we can provide that to our testing folks.
And if it's helpful, they can always reach out to me as well. We'll have it documented via email.
Okay, and then Ginger had said, I sent an email to ACT requesting electronic fee waivers. Should I just hang in tight until I hear back from ACT? My first thought is yes, but
Mine as well.
yeah, I guess I wonder, Ginger, if you could unmute yourself, how long has it been since you emailed? And was it the email address that was provided in the chat?
Well, okay, in the chat, I'm sorry. A good rule of thumb, if it's been more than several business days, I wouldn't hesitate to reach out and be proactive in trying to get an answer to that question.
I'm sorry, I didn't unmute myself, or it's only been a couple days. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can hear
Okay.
you.
It's only been a couple days, but I just didn't, I mean, it wasn't super clear on the instructions. It just said, email ACT if you'd like electronic fee waivers, but now like you're giving us instructions on how to find them online. So are we supposed to use the ones at the ACT website or wait for electronic ones?
Have you gotten a form, an order form, and submitted it?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Did you receive an order form for vouchers?
No.
Well, you can certainly, I would jump online, grab that form, populate it, and send it in.
Okay.
Well, I was going to say, just for clarification, so Chris, usually when you're ordering vouchers, then it's done via that form. For COVID-19, if they needed something that was not mailed to a school, should they be contacting directly or still use that form?
I think you're asking about actual receipt of actual physical vouchers
Oh, if they've already received.
that they've already received.
Okay.
Well, if they're going to be used this school year, June and July, again, lots of unknowns going forward. But if you'd like clarification about your options going forward past July, it would not hurt to make that phone call.
And I'm specifically talking about the electronic fee waivers.
Oh, fee waivers. I'm sorry. I thought you were talking vouchers. I'm sorry. I got this confused. So don't beat yourself, because I have some questions for you. So you said that you've already received the waivers?
No, I have not. I received an email from ACT just talking about how
Okay.
it
And
said
have
you could
done-
you could call them or click on the link to email. So I just emailed them requesting the 25 electronic fee waivers in case
Okay.
I have students that I can't get to, and and they want to sign up for, say, for the June test. I'm assuming the electronic fee waiver will just be something that I can email them and it'll look the same as regular fee waivers.
That's the plan. I would advise you to speak to somebody in accommodations, I'm sorry, regarding fee waivers. It's a
Okay.
different process than the vouchers, and I'm sorry for confusing those two.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Chris, Deb, and Tim, if for some reason we get to 11 o'clock and we get cut off, we will save all these questions and try to get an email or something out so that we answer all the questions, even if Chris doesn't have time to answer all these.
Perfect.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Yeah, we'll address all of them.
All right. So next question, what will happen in the event that the June 13th national testing date is canceled?
I wish I knew the answer to that. We are trying to be proactive and plan for so many different scenarios. You know, what we had last week, what was known last week, has certainly changed looking at today. What I don't know is what it'll look like next week and in July if that test is canceled. We'll do our best to make sure that websites like that on your screen here, you'll see those messages that may be highlighted for you to read. Earlier I showed you the specific areas where you can go to by product. The FAQs is updated regularly. I would try and stay as quote unquote connected as possible to monitor those updates and announcements.
All right. If testing juniors, now seniors, October 6th, will those accommodations submitted and approved be accepted, or will we request TA accommodations again, just as we must re-register all students?
That's one of the questions we didn't quite know the specifics about earlier this morning. I would have to ask you to reach out to accommodations and see if that process has changed. In a regular perfect world, new test date, it's a new approval. But as we all know, this is neither of those. So we have to make sure that we again keep test validity and a college admissible score being most important to these students for that opportunity for post-secondary. Monitor those announcements and be proactive in your outreach.
All right. And what number should families call to move their April test to June or July?
The catch-all number is 1-800-553-6244. And Student Services is extension 1270.
Okay, and if you wouldn't mind repeating that number again, I'm going to go ahead and put it in chat also.
It's 1-800-553-6244. And Student Services is extension 1270.
All right, thank you for that.
You're welcome.
All right, do students need to request a refund from the April Saturday test, or will ACT keep track of that and refund students who do not change test date?
Well, earlier we talked about the process by where we, for the 1920 school year, if student does nothing, it's our assumption the student no longer wishes to test, and we'll refund that money. If they choose to reschedule, they'll have to use that number that we just provided to call and actually move their registration from that previous test date to the new test date.
Okay, and just a couple points of clarification from folks. We just have 3 more questions. Oh, just got another one. Okay, Tamara said she's confused. She had received an email from ACT saying that students registered for the April 4th test date would automatically be rescheduled for the June/July test dates. If they needed to change the date, they could not do the test on new date they were scheduled for, then they could go in and change it or get a refund.
I'm not aware of that process, and I'll have to see if I get some clarification and
Yeah.
supply that to Clark and Doug.
All right, again, just for clarification, if a student registered for the April test date using a fee waiver, will they need to call in to register for the June or July test? I thought I heard you say they would need to call in to change the date instead of doing it online.
Absolutely. And it's always good practice to speak to a human as opposed to try and do something online, and initiate that test date change.
All right. So if we already requested to cancel the district testing and not participate in testing with this year's juniors, but now select to give the test in October, what would we need to do?
If you have already done your test date change through the portal that you review all your processes for weekday testing, if you've already canceled that or done whatever, you'll need to go to the site and re-enter all that information. If this is something brand new for you, you can go to the district testing site and start that process for the fall.
Okay. And question from Cindy, can a student change test date online, or would they have to call to move the registration?
I'm not familiar with the functionality of test date changes from an individual. I think good practice is to, again, make that phone call.
Okay. And then the last, a request from Gail asking we'll have you send out an updated phone sheet to everyone that is on this Zoom call. So just to make sure that they have all the current phone numbers that they need for retesting, accommodations, vouchers.
When I was providing the extension for student services, I had a thought to just list off a bunch of other ones, but then I thought, why don't we just supply the organization with those extensions and they can distribute, if that's okay with Doug and Clark.
One last question. I know we're at time. So for state testing, if we do not wish to give the June test, we don't need to do anything to specify this. We just need to go to the site and register for the October state test.
There is a change in participation function that must be enacted. So once you do that, you're good to go.
All right, and we are 1 minute past. So we'll turn it back over to our hosts.